Haven't seen you since you lost your wife.
Calls again, you need the invite.
Yeah, is there a,
It's on the,
you're going for a holiday?
This is taking care of us. Getting better.
Oh, okay, I will. You're welcome. She said they can hear you on the
Takes a while.
yeah, it is fine. Right, if he calls again, that's it, that's the end. All right, thank you. I don't know what to do. I'll see and text you guys. If it's still here, you're gonna have to.
Oh, they didn't hear us
I
upstairs?
saw this conference that, well, I know he died anyway, but did they have was it Dick Rogers, and if he died, I see that this kind of time that he was buried. Did they have any kind of anything? Or-
And there's a limit to these. Look at everything crazy.
Should be fine.
Oh, it's not.
Maybe that works out. Maybe more crazy, because they
It shows it's streaming now, downstairs. Oh, no. No, he's not.
Are we ready?
Are you ready? Allison?
Yeah, just looking for the.
No, he's not here. The girls had said that Carl was looking for the invite, and then changed his mind because he said I was gonna let him in, but I can't let him in unless he logs in.
What are we doing, Carol?
We're just trying to get hold of it.
I guess he had trouble logging in. But I also discovered while Andy was talking that it was not live streaming. It was recording, but not live streaming. So I wanted to make sure that got correct.
Oh. We're not that well.
Parts that you pulled off so we can get in the meeting.
What was that?
Richard is trying to get into the meeting and Roger. Callie wasn't speaking properly.
Oh, boy.
Oh, let me, try to transfer you, hold on, please. Call 4400. All right,
Does he have someone there helping him? Yep.
Okay.
Richard, can you hear us?
I can hear you, thank you.
Okay. We're just waiting for David D'Souza to come back into the chambers, then I believe we can start again.
All right, thanks for waiting, I appreciate it.
Sorry about that.
Carol, are you picking it up when we talk from here?
I can't tell until we listen to it later. I know from past experience, it's very difficult when you talk from there to here. So you
You want
really,
us to come over
you
there?
really should. You really should, yes. Say 10:28, returning into session.
Thank you. So for the record, this is Andrew Tice again, attorney for the appellant. And I'll repeat the question in case the tape didn't pick it up. Board member Eddie had asked about what was the value of the buildable 2-acre part of the land, what the calculation, is that correct? And Eddie is now nodding yes. And I did some quick math in my head and came up with a number of 1,200,000.
I know I heard the conversation.
And just checking, it's actually very close. It's 1,202,900. So it was 2,900 off.
For our
But
residents.
that, from what we calculate, working backwards, if you subtract the value of the house and building, and you subtract what we see as the value of the wetlands, that's what we're left with the building from, which we think is vastly overrated. It should be anywhere from 600 to 770,000
Very bottom,
for that land. It's a lot of money, but it's a nice land, it's got a good water view. That part, that 2 acres, that's more than value of that property. Not the 1.2 million, which is what you'd expect a 2-acre site, right on the bluff with a good view. That's what you'd expect
Well, I can look
to
up
have
the property for you.
2 billion.
Database,
Will come
going to-
or else.
But,
So,
let me.
Are there other questions before I'm finished with this? Mr. Humphrey, I guess I'll note for the record too, that I guess Mr. Humphrey has joined us. I did not hear my brilliant presentation at the beginning,
Oh, you found it? Okay.
but I will just tell him that I essentially went over the details of a letter which I previously sent to him dated June 1st. The aspects of settlement in it, I did not talk about those settlement aspects, but I basically went through my factual recitation of that letter. That's essentially what we missed. So, I now call Mr. David Wigman. I guess David will have you come up here and I'll.
The chair right over there.
Well, but it's gonna pick up my questions too.
I would alternate. I know it's a pain.
Or do you want to move farther over and then he could be
Yes,
over on
I just
that
wanted to make
side?
sure it was still.
Okay, so I'll approach for the questions and then, could you please give your name and address for the record, please?
David Woodman, Sweeney Real Estate in Bristol, 1 Church Hedge, Rhode Island, 02904.
Okay. You prepared an appraisal for the subject property?
Yes, I did.
And that appraisal has been entered into is already part of the record as filed with DP. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? And for the record, the chairman is nodding yes behind his mask. Mr. Woodman, does that appraisal contain your credentials?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And can I call you David?
Yes, you can call me David, please.
All right. So David, your credentials are in the report. So I'll just hit some of the high point. You've been accepted as an expert by zoning boards all over Rhode Island, is that correct?
Correct.
And you've been accepted as an expert by the Rhode Island Superior Court, Family Court, the United States District Court, etc. And you examined the site personally?
Yes, I toured the site personally.
Okay, more than once?
Yes, twice. Yes.
So, given this hardwood back and forth, I'm kind of going to let you talk about
Sure.
what you found with your appraisal.
Okay. Just in going over, Andy kind of touched on some of the points of the property, so I won't go into them in as much detail. 13.6 acre parcel of land, for which the 2 acres is the top parcel, that we really have a question on the value of that. If you look at it, the site is generally low-lying, majority of the land being freshwater forest and shrub. You see that? The house is up here, the rest of it goes down, it's wetlands, it's agricultural, and not even high-end agricultural, as Andy pointed out earlier. You're very decent reviews from the improvements of the house. Views on it, if you look at the front page, you can see the other properties next to it, which are much higher elevation, much flatter, better views, and those are what Andy was talking about. Those are assessed at a much lower rate. Right next to that, inferior grade, inferior land, and those are assessed at a lower value. Subject is improved with the dwelling. As we say, as I say, we're not really looking at the value of the dwelling, we're accepting that as assessed. If you look at the field card, and as Andy pointed out, there are 2 things on there. There's the land portion of it, but the 2 acres.
I'm going to interrupt you here a second, David, just because I introduced this earlier as an exhibit. Okay. But could you just, for the record, tell us where you got this field card, that you provided?
This is the vision appraisal field card from the town of Little Compton here that is available in the assessor's office. So it's the assessor's card done by Vision Appraisal for the property.
Okay. And you actually got it from the office?
Correct.
Rather than online?
Correct. Yes.
Just wanted to establish.
Right, yeah, this is not, to clarify to Andy's point, there is the vision card online. This is not that. This is the one that comes from the assessor's office.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, and if you look at the bottom there, it has, along with the landline valuation section, there's a 2 acre of buried live WF that's assessed at $1,778,300. And then it has underneath that 6 acres, 1 acre, and 4 acres for is 11.6 acres that is assessed at $174,000 that Andy spoke about earlier.
Yeah, usually.
Now, so that gives a total land value on this card at the bottom right-hand corner of $1,952,300. That is then, if you look above that, the 2 paragraphs above on the appraised value summary report, the special land value of $1,383,400. It really doesn't show on here how they went from the $1,952,300 for all that land to $1,383,400, but that's the amount that is on the assessor's card on the bid as far as the
Can we
value.
assume that because of its classification as farmland?
But it already has it assessed here as farmland down on these as the total. So I'm not sure exactly how it got to the one from the other, but we're looking at it as the $1,383,900. That's what I went off of. And when you look at that in my report, it says this is how the property is assessed at. $327,300 for the building, $1,383,900 for the land. For which 2 acres of that land is the usable land, that's where the house is, that's buildable. If anybody were to put something there, that's where they would put it on that parcel of land, which again coincides with the 2 acres that is on the field part from the town. What we looked at is sales of, actually looked at waterfront, because this is technically, to Andy's point, where this parcel is, where the building is, it's really water view. It's a long hike down to the water, through wetlands, through the farm, etc. But I looked at, for purposes of this valuation, waterfront land throughout the state. There wasn't a ton of waterfront land that I found in the town. It would have been most helpful if I found 5 or 6 right here in the town that I could have used 4 times. That is on the last page. There are 8 comparable sales there of waterfront land. They range in size from 1.9 acres up to 17 acres, and that's the parcel of land in Little Compton, which is a much superior location, south-facing, on the water, relatively flat, no woodlands or anything. It's pretty much grass. That's sold for just under $200,000 an acre. In total, these 8 properties sold for an average of $6.50 per square foot, or $283,000 an acre. In going through this, excuse me one second.
Andy?
1.9 to 17.09 acres, and from $3.17 to $10.87 per square foot, with a mean of $6.50 and a median of $6.56 per square foot of land area. Most of the comparables were superior locations. We reconciled at $7 a square foot, which is above the mean and above the median, for these 2 acres at about $600,000 rounded. It was just a little bit more. We then added back the value of the buildings, and then we added back the $174,000, which is that farm, forest, and open space land, and reconciled for a total value of $1,001,000. And incorporates the $7 a square foot for this 2 acre parcel of land. The Andy's point, that we feel is overvalued in assessment.
So, David, could you talk a little bit more about, you did use several comps from outside, yes, Little Compton. Could you tell us why, in your expert opinion, those are valid comps?
Sure. Again, preferably I'd like to find comparable sales all in the town. Because they're waterfront, there's not a lot
Andy?
of them that sold within a couple-year period of the effective date of the valuation. So in going out there, you have to look at it, what would a prospective buyer look at? And they would look in these other towns. Again, it's qualitative adjustments looking at them, but they were from Portsmouth and Tiverton, Jamestown, and some up in Maryland. But they're reflective as a whole of what waterfront properties are selling for in this part of the state. And that, for the most part, came out to, $650 a square foot, that's reconciled at $7.
And just for the record, Joe, obviously, by law, this is based on December 31st, 2018.
Correct.
So you would not be using any sales that happened in the 2019.
There were no sales after it, and these were within the 2-year period, 2 to 3 year period prior to 12/31. And what it looks like, it just, when you look at the total assessment on it, because 11.6 acres of this property is farm, forest, and open space, and assessed relatively low, it really looks like all of the value just was put to this 2-acre parcel of land, not with any sort of rhyme or reason as to why it was as high as it is, because comparables are just don't bear that out. And that's what it looks like when I first got the report, when I first looked at it, when we first talked about it, and that's when you look at this, that's what it looks like. And it appears that that's the case when you look at other comparables.
I have a question when you're done.
Yep, that's fine.
Yes.
You want me to stand over there, please, Cheryl?
Sure, we'll back up.
Okay, not a problem, just have them come in.
So I grew up on a farm south of this, Mr. Whitman, and I hunted the property as I was a kid. I noticed there was no soil map and included amongst your appraisal there. Can you describe the soils for us, please?
Soils are predominantly wet and sticky.
So.
My recollection was
Soil map. I have the soil map. Closer to the water it is drier, past the stream runs through the property.
when you did your on-site inspections, did you go all the way down to the water's edge?
Yes.
And in your professional opinion, could one, assuming you got all your requisite permits, build down close to the water?
I don't believe you could build down the water, not with the wetlands that was close down there.
So what you're saying is the soil is not sufficiently dry close to the river's edge?
That is my belief, correct? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you spoke about the house having a seasonal view. I realize we're just discussing the land, but part of your intention is that the views are not that great. How high is that house?
The house itself is a 2-story house. 1-story house, sorry, I take it back. It's a 1-story house that pretty much looks at the tops of trees down there, as opposed to the land that I spoke to next door to this, that is up high and looks right out over this. You really cannot see the water from the house. I mean, in the wintertime, because there are no leaves on the trees, you have seasonal view there. For the most part, anytime this time of year, you cannot see water from the house.
And the barn, which I guess the house was built by Mrs. Huff in 1975, and the barn by Ms. Spencer here in 2008. Is there anyone living in the barn? Thank you very much.
So other board members have questions? Let me just, if I may, and I'll follow up later on the question about the land on the beach as well. But, David, we're just talking about, you said the land next door, higher and with better views. Is that, for the record, that is the land immediately to the north owned by Drescher?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And that has a significantly lower assessed value?
Yes, it does.
And in your professional opinion, based on your research and your examination of the site, is there any reason why that property would have a significantly lower assessed value than the current property?
Not to my knowledge.
And in fact, in your expert opinion, should it have a higher value based on the quality of the land? If the value of this property is correct, if the Spencer property is correct, the value of the property to the north with the higher, drier land and better view should have a higher value.
Yes, yes, I agree with that.
I agree with
I'd like to be heard.
Right. Well, on the calendar over there.
Yeah.
Richard?
I don't know.
You saying something?
Yes, can you hear me now, Andy? Andy, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you sort of.
I have to go.
All right, I'll speak a little louder.
Yeah.
Would you put some belt and suspenders on David's opinion? You know, I know David, he's a fantastic expert. But could you go through the usual litany based on all of his opinions? It's based on his training, his experience, and his opinions that are all to a reasonable degree of professional real estate certainty. Could you do that for us, please?
Yeah, I'll repeat. His question were, his exact words were trying to put some belts and suspenders on David's testimony as to reasonable degree of certainty and so forth. So I was trying to keep things moving, but I will do that.
Thank you, Andy.
So, David, can you come closer to the mic,
Yes.
please?
Yep.
Tell us. So first of all, just a little bit more can you just tell us a little bit about more of your background and experience? How long have you been doing this?
I've been working for Sweeney Real Estate and Appraisal since we opened the business in 2010, and prior to that, I was with Rodney Real Estate with Tom Sweeney doing appraisal work since 2002.
And for how long have you been a licensed appraiser?
I have been a licensed appraiser since 2007.
And how many, can you, I guess I'm not going to ask you to quantify the number of appraisals you did. That doesn't make sense. We've already talked about you being accepted as an expert by various bodies, including the Rhode Island Superior Court. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the U.S. District Court for the District of Rhode Island.
Correct.
Has accepted you as a. And without bringing you through all the separate opinions that you've given here, but the opinions that you have given in response to my questions and Mr. Andy's questions, are they based on your experience and training as a licensed real estate appraiser?
Yes, multiple years of training and experience.
And are they based on your personal examination of the subject property?
Yes, it is.
And as you already testified, you personally went to the tax assessor's office and got the card here, which has been introduced in our evidence. I don't think we marked it. So far, it's the only piece of evidence that's been entered at the hearing today. And your appraisal is also based on your research regarding comparable properties, both in the town of Little Compton and throughout the state of Rhode Island. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so your conclusions then are based on your experience and training to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes, they are.
And is the town solicitor looking for us to accept him as an expert witness?
I don't know that. I guess we can ask. Mr. Humphrey, do you want him accepted specifically by the board as an expert witness?
I do. It's their decision. But if they were to ask me my advice, I would say that he is certainly qualified as an expert, and it appears that he has a factual basis for his opinions.
Okay. So I guess I would ask that he was willing to be accepted as an expert witness by the board. And could I ask for a roll call vote on that, since we're doing this electronically?
I'll make a motion that we accept the witness as an expert.
Which is fine, I open the door.
Please identify yourself for the record.
Stetson Eddy is making a motion to accept Mr. Whitman as an expert witness in this testimony before the board today.
Second is by member Bob Booth.
And David D'Souza.
All voting in the affirmative.
Yeah, no, I.
Thank you.
You said
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Something I hadn't heard that, yeah.
Anything further from this witness? I would now call Carol Ladd.
Yeah.
How about Debbie?
Debbie, I'm sorry. Carol. I didn't hear. So, Debbie.
Yes, Andy?
I'm better that way if I do it that way. I'm trying to think who Carol Ladd is. Anyway. Debbie, can you please give your name and address for the record, please?
Deborah Ladd, not my address,
Yes, that's fine.
from 29 Meeting House Lane, Little Compton, Rhode Island.
And if we could ask you to tell us a little bit about your background. How long have you been in real estate? Your professional credentials?
I originally got my broker's license in 1979 in Massachusetts, and in Rhode Island, I got it in 1984. I've been working out of an office in Little Compton since 1986, which is 34 years. I've done a lot of things in those years.
Okay. And you're a licensed real estate broker in the state of Rhode Island?
Correct.
And since when is that? How long have you had that?
Since 1984.
And as you said, you've had an office here in Little Compton since?
1986.
And I know this is kind of difficult, but can you take an estimate of about how many property sales per year in Little Compton that you're involved in? We'll say per year. You don't have to add it up over the many years.
I don't know. Maybe 15,
So about
12 to 15, because I do Westport.
Okay. So 12 to 15 sales where you're the broker for either the buyer or the seller.
Correct.
Per year, and that would be
Correct.
I mean, I put in my time.
And are you personally familiar with the site?
I am.
Have you been to the site?
I have.
And in your professional work as a real estate broker with sales in Little Compton, have you had experience examining the Little Compton tax assessor records?
I have.
I know. Well, I always had a little pad, and I put my time on the side.
At this point, I would ask the board to accept Debbie Ladd also as a real estate expert. Not just a clear appraisal, but she is a real estate expert in Little Compton. I'm gonna ask the board to accept that.
Stetson, I so moved. Second.
All in favor?
Yes, we spoke last week about dumpsters.
I was just.
Motion was made by Stetson Edding, seconded by Bob Booth. All three members were in favor.
No.
Sir, did you want to say something else?
I was also a certified residential appraiser in the state of Rhode Island for 20 years. I let it expire 2 years ago.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So talking about this specific site, and the question about there are different values between this site and the property to the north of this site. Could you talk about that? Could you talk about the properties that are owned by Dresser and Cabot that are north of this site, and how they compare to this property, both in amenities and value, in your opinion, and assessed value?
First of all, they have road frontage. This property has no road frontage whatsoever. They have a much.
Debbie, can you talk about the tad, please?
Okay. The properties north of the subject all have road frontage, number one. They're at a much higher elevation. When you look at the overall properties, their percentage of wetlands is probably significantly less than the subject that we're talking about. And yet their assessed values are much, much, much lower. I honestly, I don't even call her land below the house site farmland. It's muck. And granted, after you go down and over the wet part and up to the river, there is some uplands once you get down there. But I think if you look at the expense of getting down there and the current flood zone maps, it's probably not even buildable now. Or it wouldn't be cost effective if you should build a house.
Right. So, and based on your experience, there's more than one wetland crossing. There are two streams on that property.
Right.
And it's a considerable length of land that you'd have to build a bridge or a causeway. Is that correct?
Correct.
There's only one zone.
Thank you, ladies. Have a great day.
All right, well, we'll have,
Is that the assessor's map?
Yes.
They're not always accurate. I mean, sometimes they put the main streams, but if you get a biologist in there, sometimes there are other streams that are marked.
all right, so just for the record, Debbie, you've walked that land more than once. You've
Correct.
walked from the house down to the beach,
Correct.
is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And based on your experience with the real estate market in Little Compton, strike that. In Little Compton, you often have to, as a real estate broker and formerly as an appraiser, you have to look and have a knowledge of the environmental laws to help you determine the value of properties. Is that correct?
Yes,
So you have experience where you've represented people in deals where they've had to either get CRMC or DEM approval. Is that correct?
yes.
So, and this particular property it's a narrow strip of land between the river and the muck and the wetlands. So in your opinion, would that property be buildable?
No,
Not to mention, we haven't even talked about the problem of putting a septic system right next to the river.
right.
In your opinion, would that be a feasible method, the ability to put a septic system down there on the beach?
I'd have to go back and review it honestly, because I haven't been down there. I just think the cost of getting down there and with the flood zones, it wouldn't be feasible at all.
Let's talk about, while we're talking about the land down there, the muck and the wetlands, what is your experience in Little Compton as to the value of prime industrial land? If you had, like a field out here, it's high and dry and level, what's your experience in the value of not buildable, but just prime agricultural land?
Well, I know the Nature Conservancy gets between $15,000 and $20,000 an acre for good prime agricultural land.
And now, on the contrary, as you've been looking at properties all these years and whatnot, what is the normal value of land that's not agricultural, it's not prime, that's basically wetlands, wet wetlands with streamers through it? Would $300 an acre be a reasonable average price based on your experience? Would you answer yes or no?
Yes,
Not?
yes.
Okay. It's even harder with the math.
I know.
And just coming back to the other question, just of the Dresser property, based on your experience, your many years of doing this, and your credentials, and your inspection of the site, and your review of the tax assessment records, would it be your expert opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that there is no reasonable difference for the property, the subject property, to be valued so much higher than its neighboring property immediately to the north?
None whatsoever.
And in fact, you've seen the appraisal that was done by David, is that correct?
Yes.
And based on your years of experience and training and your professional certifications and your knowledge of the site and your inspection of the assessment records, would you concur with his value of the land as set forth in his appraisal?
I do.
I have nothing further on this witness.
I'd like to ask a couple of questions. Stetsonetti, hi Debbie.
Hi.
Going back to, how did you access the river when you visited Ms. Spencer's property?
I walked down.
And is there a trail?
Yep.
And when I did the subdivision back in the, I'd say the early 90s from Betty Huff, we had a right-of-way along the northerly bound for her son Ward. Is that right-of-way in use?
I have no idea.
And property to the north, you mentioned Drescher. Does he have a road to the river?
He does.
Okay. And property to the south, Eustace, which Mrs. Eustace was a sheriff. Does that have a road to the river?
I've only been down as far as.
You go by Chucky Whiten and you
Yeah.
go down? Is
Yeah.
there- is
I
that-
haven't been down to the bottom.
Okay. All righty, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Good morning, Tom Hall. She looks
Right.
great.
I have nothing further for this witness.
No, I know.
I would call Reverend Rebecca Spencer.
She's still upstairs. Yeah, I can hear her moving.
A little closer to the mic.
Where's the mic?
The mic is just the laptop,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Don't worry about being seen. We've given up on that. We're just being heard as our hope. So if you could please give your name and address for the record, please.
Rebecca Spencer, 247C, West Main Road, Wilcompton, Rhode Island.
And you are the appellant in this appeal,
Yes.
correct? Okay. And could you just tell the board a little bit about your history with the house and the property?
Oh,
Mhm.
well, my husband and I bought the
Most of
property
the time they
in
don't accept a copy.
1995,
They want to certify.
and it was unwalkable to the water.
We
We
get it through the city and town.
still get a lot of brambles, but the field where now Mr. Johansson has built his house and barn was a field that Walker's farm stand used for vegetables. So we drove down a dirt laneway that is now paved to get, we have the right of way
All
there.
right, I will.
We built a barn, which is not residential, it's a barn for cows. I currently have 14 cows, beef cows, 9 mothers and 5 calves. I applied to the Agricultural Trust to see if they would be interested in conserving the land for agricultural purposes, and was told that it really wasn't suitable for good agricultural uses. I also applied to the, I don't have the name of it, the Northern Rhode Island Conservation District, who came down and will reimburse farmers for fencing and pumps and water wells, and my land is not suitable for that either. What else should I say? So we've lived there since 1995. Debbie appraised it.
Talk to them, sorry.
Sorry.
Speak up.
My husband died in 2008, and since then I've expanded the farming property and continue to live there, as well as work in Providence.
When you say expanding the farming property, you mean adding more cows and?
Yes.
Okay. And,
Few too many cows right now for the poor quality of the soil. And that's one thing, is that the soil, I also can't remember the name of it, but it's something like Midland muck. And it is just, in our little bowl, it is not good soil.
so let's go down that path. Tell us about the path to the water and that extra, the 11.6 acres between your house and the water. Take us on a tour of it. I've been down there too, but
Yep.
for these people.
When the Ag Trust came, actually misheard them. I thought it was November, but it was May. And it was very wet. You had to wear boots. You could not get through without wearing boots, which happens seasonally. Right now, you can get by with sneakers. But so you walk down, I've got my barn, and the cows are there, we've got head gates, and we put in a well for the cows. There are 2 streams, there are 2 bridges that we put in over the streams, and seasonally, there are just real wet spots, and it's tough to walk to the water. Once you do get to the water, it doesn't really go up in a hill, and it's not buildable because it's right on the water. But there is a meadow there that I'm hoping I can get a farm exemption to put the cows there, because that is the best grass that we have. But it's between the buildable lot where we live and the water, it's pretty much muck. I do rotational grazing, and I go in one little tiny 2 or 1.5 acre pasture, and then I make them eat a bale of hay in between because I just don't have enough land.
And,
Doing a good job with farming.
Oh, okay.
okay. And that's actually your desire to retire and live there full-time?
Yes.
So coming back down to the meadow by the water, that's basically a very narrow meadow between
Yes.
the muck and the barrier beach itself,
That is
correct?
correct. We measure the erosion every year. I have about 50, it's about 50 feet. The meadow is wide, and if we lose a little bit, hurricane.
Okay, so you have about 50 feet of meadow.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and what is the information that they
Okay,
learned?
and then there's a little bit of beach beyond.
No, it's a
That-
cliff that goes down.
You're
to
saying that, okay. So that's basically, so within the 200-foot coastal jurisdiction, every bit and a lot more of the dry land at the beach is within that 200-foot.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
You're saying it's only 50 feet wide.
I would say, I'm not good at estimating, but I would say 50, yes.
But you have measured it.
Yes.
Because you were measuring erosion. So that's not just a wild guess, correct?
Right, but where we measured it wasn't right to the edge of the grass, but I would say it's about 50. Well, you were there.
That's fine, but I'm not a witness, so I just want to make sure. That's all I have from this witness.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, one more question, I didn't want to follow up and probably. Mr. Eddy had asked about the right-of-way to the river. You don't have any dry right-of-way to get down to the river other than that trail, which is wet most of the
Which is in the middle of our property.
It's in your property. You don't have a right-of-way over someone else's property to get down there.
No, well, from the road to our property, we have a
Right.
right of way.
Right, but for you to get from your house down to the river, you don't have some other right-of-way there that somebody over your neighbor's property to get to.
Well, there is technically on the map a right of way, which is not being used.
All right, I will give.
And in fact, Mr. Dresser, that your neighbors have blocked that off, is that correct?
It is blocked off, yes.
Thank you.
Stetsonetti again. Reverend Spencer, first off, I applaud you for your agricultural use of the property.
Thank you.
So the strip that's down the meadow, you're calling it, by the water, you estimate is 60 feet wide.
I think so.
From the top of the cliff to the Mansfield muck or whatever the
Right,
wetland
for
soil is.
Mansfield Month, that's it, thank you.
Okay. And so that 60 feet, does it run the entire, from the northerly boundary from Dresser down to the southerly boundary?
No, it gets swampy to the south with blueberries and,
And do you know what soil type that is?
I can't remember, I'm sorry.
And back to the Agricultural Conservancy Trust, is that a dead duck or are you still negotiating?
No, I spoke with Rusty Cabot, who was kind of my liaison, and he pretty much said we are not in their top priority
Same
list.
phone number, right?
I'd urge you to continue negotiating with them,
All right, if there's anything else you
if
need,
possible. And there, as Mr. Teitzel confirmed, there are some substantial tax advantages if you were to do a bargain.
Oh, I know, but I think Rusty felt that the offer that they were going to make
Oh,
because of
thank
the
you.
poor quality of soil, I believe he used the word would be insulting to me.
And last question is on the right-of-way benefiting Ziggy.
Right.
Sigurd Johannesson. That's never been improved by him?
No.
Okay, so that's either meta, or it's either farmland or brush or stream or whatever.
Yeah, it's, well, it's pasture, there's stone wall. Yeah.
Okay.
Or swamp.
Thank you very much.
Swamp, mostly.
Any other questions? At this point, I have nothing further in the way of evidence. I would obviously like to reserve some rebuttal if necessary and closing arguments. Do you mind if I stand over here so that I can hear her better and behind her?
Good morning, I'm Denise Cosgrove, Tax Assessor for Honolulu, Compton.
Good morning.
Good morning.
just see a raised hand here from the solicitor. Do you have something to say?
Yes, well, Denise is going to be testifying, correct?
Yes?
So I think I should examine her.
He wants,
I'm sorry?
he thinks she should be examined? Do you?
Right, so, well, she's a witness, so we're there to Denise, can you just give us your background, please?
Yes. For years, 14 plus years, I worked at P.D. Humphrey Company as the bookkeeper, accounts payable, vendor invoice approval, customer service, sales rep, and then I went on to manage an antique co-op of over 350 vendors and 35 employees. And from there, I ran my own business, a tea room. And from there, I was hired as a clerk in 2007 for the Board of Assessors. And in 2018, I was appointed the tax assessor for the town of Northampton. And I received my certification from the state of Rhode Island. As a certified.
Denise, you've been to court with us a number of times. You understand how the system works. You understand what level you are at now.
Yes.
So,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what the founder was saying. Can you repeat that, please, Dick?
Certainly. Denise has been to court with us on a number of cases over the years. So she understands how the system works. And what I know that Denise would have done in this case is looked at the factors and listened carefully to the testimony of your three witnesses. And I think Denise would like to be heard about her opinion. Is that true, Denise?
That is true.
All right. So with that background in mind, in an effort to expedite matters, why don't you respond to any questions that the board might have? And I'll turn it over to them now. Thank you, Denise.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me, would you like me to give a brief synopsis of how the assessing in the Honolulu Compton happens in the assessing world? Or, well,
I think if we make it more specific to this case, Denise.
Okay, we've done a mass appraisal in 2018, and Vision Appraisal Technologies was won the contract for that appraisal. They did a sales analysis. Everything is based on a sales analysis, and through the sales analysis, they derived the value for the property in question. Initially, they had a higher value on that property. Ms. Spencer came and met with Vision Appraisal, and at that time I went and reviewed the property. I walked the property several times. I made an adjustment, feeling that since the property had been looked at before, and contested before, I wanted to make sure that Ms. Spencer did not feel she was slighted in any way. I adjusted the value significantly lower than I felt the value actually was, because I felt she would appeal it. And I was trying to be assured that the town did not have incurred more expense for an appeal. With that being said, I looked at the comparables that was presented at the time, and I can give you what I've done recently to show in detail what I felt the comparables that were given were not justified, because they were not from Northampton. Primarily, they were from other parts of the state. And if you look at how Northampton compares to other cities and towns, we're more comparable to Jamestown, Charlestown, Westerly than we are to Barrington or Bristol or Portsmouth or Tiverton. But if you take those and you look at what the value and the taxes would be in those cities and towns, you will see that we've been more than very expensive. So I'd like to give this exhibit to each one of you to look at. Do you have any questions? Certainly.
Good morning, Tom Hall, Sheila speaking. All right, well, you can actually access that online. Yeah. Yeah, if you
So,
go to the
Dick, I'm worried that
website,
you don't have this in your hand. But
That's all right.
The 2 acres that were in question is the prime house site.
search that way.
And Little Compton zoning is 2 acres. So that's where the bulk of the assessment comes into play.
No, you can sign
So
it.
Ms. Spencer's property, before taxation, before any adjustments on that 2 acres, would be $1,778,300. So if you look on the field record card, that's the first land line down at the bottom right-hand side. She is being taxed on $1,383,839. So that is shown on the top of the spreadsheet that I presented to you. That shows that her taxes on her land is $8,206.53. Now, if you look at comparisons to other properties.
Can I interrupt you just a second?
Sure.
And that goes back to my question about, Mr. Goodman, the special land value, $1,383,400.
Yes.
How did it get down to that? Is that because of the adjustment you made or
Yes.
because of the farmland?
It's an adjustment I made with, we did not tax her completely as a waterfront, even though the property is waterfront, we gave them a discount because of the topo and the wetlands and the access, we've given her a discount. She's being taxed, if you look at the bottom of my spreadsheet, like other water view properties in town, not waterfront properties. So if you look at what they pay for taxes, she's comparable to other properties in town in Little Compton. And if you look at the properties of the appraiser, they're significantly, their taxes would be higher. So in Little Compton, I mean, throughout the state, how taxation works is if tax value of the property, the rate is lower, if you raise the value, you have to up the rate to compensate. So their rates in other cities and towns are significantly higher than ours, except for Jamestown, which is lower. It's closer to ours, and her value is closer to the comp in Jamestown, except that Jamestown comp is only 4 acres, and we're talking 13 acres here. She has 2 buildings on this property. I don't know if she's ever attempted to have it subdivided, and if that other house site could be another house site. If she has that barn, studio, there's living space in that building right now. I'm not sure if that could be subdivided. It looks like it could be subdivided. With our zoning, you only need 175-foot surround. And she has the ability, from what looking at it, I haven't had it engineered. I don't know. She hasn't had it engineered. There's no soil samples, there's no engineering that was submitted, so I cannot ascertain that. So in comparison to other properties in town, she's been treated more than fair. There are many, many sales along the waterfront there that happened during the last rebound. They're up in the millions. A prime example was everyone's familiar with is the Bayberry Farm. That has conservation easements, it has wetlands, it crosses streams. The land sale alone was $6 million. I mean, I could cite other properties in town that sold in that same time frame for the rebound that significantly higher and more comparable than the ones that were presented to us. As far as the Quaker Hill Farm, that was more than one parcel sale, and it is now being built on, so that's typically just a land sale. And if you look at that one, the taxes on that one would be $19,000. So, if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer those.
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
All right. Do you have any questions?
Stetson Eddie. Denise, on On this property, I've asked several people if know the soils and where the line of demarcation is between what I'll call the good soil, the buildable soil, and the bad soil. Do you know, in other words, that upland piece to the east towards West Main Road is presumably high and dry. It's past soil testing. How far does that line go to the westward towards the river as you go downhill?
I think it stops right around the second building. I mean, I don't have the map in front of me, but I've walked it. Even when I've walked it, it's actually better land than my land where I live. I mean.
So you speak of a barn studio. Did that have any soil testing done for the erection of that?
No, and there's been one of the criteria for being in the Farm Forest and Open Space program is that we've asked in 2017 for every farmer to come up with a farm plan, and when they have their farm plan, they have that soil map done, and they have it actually laid out to what crops they're going to be putting, if they have cattle, where they're going to be placing the cattle, how they're going to be rotating it. So in 2017, every property who was in the Farm Forest and Open Space program to come up with that farm plan. I have yet to receive Rebecca's.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I answered this question, that's fine.
Close to the mic, Andy Tice for the record again. First of all, may I ask that we number these exhibits? Can we number the vision appraisal card that I submitted as Exhibit 1 and the spreadsheet that we just submitted by the assessor as Exhibit 2?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Great, thank you, ma'am. I have a question.
You want 1 and A?
No, I
So the spreadsheet from
You have a question?
the assessor will be
My in-laws.
I think we want to keep those straight
On Watson Way.
going
Yeah.
forward.
How do I get so I can take their trash to the dump?
Oh, is this the first time, Andy, you're seeing Exhibit A?
That is correct, yes.
You need time to examine the assessor's comments?
No, I'd like to actually ask her questions about them, if I may. I think I can do it with cross-examination. I just need to start back a little bit more and just to ask, what was involved in your obtaining certification from the state of Rhode Island as a certified tax?
Well, you have to be appointed an assessor for a year, and you have to qualify, you have to take an ethics test, you have to pass an ethics exam, you have to pass Rhode Island 101,
Only way we're gonna get out.
tax administration, and then there's other classes that you take.
Rhode Island 101 tax administration, who gives that class?
It is different assessors in the state of Rhode Island who are certified to give it. It's actually the IAAO, the International Association of Assessors Standards.
Okay, and how many hours was that class? How many hours altogether was that class?
Well, it was a 3-day class, so 24 hours, and then the test.
So about 24 hours of training in the test. But other than that, your previous experience was all in business, but didn't have to do with assessing, did it?
No, it's not.
So looking at what you said as Exhibit A, let's take the first thing. The far right-hand column, you saying 2 acres or less building lot tax. You have the number, and that's the actual number that the community is taxed, the actual taxes that would be paid, right?
For the 2 acres only.
Right, okay. But that tax rate, looking at that we used in the appraisal, looking across it, the tax rate is very different in the different towns, is it not?
Correct.
So first thing I would do would be, I would object to that column. I don't think we have to strike out this whole exhibit, but I would definitely move that column should be struck completely. It has, what we are challenging here, Rhode Island law, is the value of the property, not the taxes paid. There's no doubt that in Barrington, where I lived for many years, there is a much higher tax rate, but it's a totally different community and a totally different school system. You don't even have a high school here. They have one of the best in the state. They're paying for it. The actual taxes paid have no relevance whatsoever to our discussion in this board. So I would ask.
How do you feel about the relevance of the Little Compton costs?
The taxes that are paid, I'm willing to leave that on there for now, yes. But the other part, the middle part, the right-hand column will be as far as the taxes paid. You know, actually, as we talk about it, I'm not really okay with Little Compton stuff either, because that can vary depending on the conservation easements and so forth. And again, I think it should be the value, not the tax paid.
How many guys have learned? However, you can just do what they are credibility in the business. What's happening is
No, I know. The question is, we can get an agreement for X amount of time. To continue. Like, if you want to retire, or how does that work? Because I thought John Bates had said he should do that. Yeah.
Are you looking to me? Well, it's up to you to decide. My request is still that you strike that last column of the physics. Fold it over, if you will, and not consider it. You can, it's your decision to make on advice of counsel, whatever you want to do. That is my motion. And I would request that you decide to accept it that way, then I would request a motion either way.
Well, my reason for putting it in there is, like I mentioned, value. And what you tax on, and what your tax rate is up. One goes up, one goes down. They're reflected. So if he's making a comparison to Barrington or Jamestown, it's a different community with a totally different set of value of rates and values. It doesn't, so it should stay there because.
I personally feel that if you're giving Rick Road and all these other pieces of property as comparables, then they are relevant. When you got column is relevant, showing
No, I know, that's the whole thing.
the values. You're giving them a value, and I think there should be some comparables.
Yeah, no.
And I feel the comparable valuations are important, but I don't think the actual tax amount is that relevant. Of the comps other than Little Compton. So my preference would be to strike the column as it pertains to the valuations from the communities, well, other than Quaker Hill Farms, the other ones.
Or whatever the deal is, whatever they agree.
So.
All in favor of tax
Before you go on, this could not be heard by the microphone at all. So, Mr. Reddy, would you please come closer and state the motion clearly so that the record reflects it properly?
Stepsonetti here. Mr. Tights requested that the furthermost column on Exhibit A be struck, and the board voted to strike the valuation of the comparables presented by Mr. Woodman, other than the one for Quaker Hill Farms. So the comps that will remain are, other than the subject property, they're Quaker Hill Farm, and then down at the bottom, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties in Little Compton.
Motion was made by Stetson Eddy, seconded by Bob Booth, all 3 members of the board in favor.
I know, I spent all my extra time outside, there's nothing else to do.
Let me continue asking questions. So looking at the bottom part of your spreadsheet, which is titled My Comps, Current Sales. You have all properties that have sold, you've got sale price,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And then you have the date over on the right, I see assessment date, but what's the date of the sales on these properties? Is that here?
On
Am I
the
missing it
left-hand side.
Okay, oh, all right, okay. So, right off the bat, bottom three, 2019, 2019, and 2020. Those aren't relevant, those are after the assessment date.
Right, I mostly put them there to show that they're still, the properties are still holding value. The first three were from 2018. And if you'd like, you can strike those last ones.
Well, I would like to strike them, since I'm not allowed to bring you 2019 comps. I don't feel that the assessor should. But let me ask you about the things. So 315Q West Main Road, platform. Where is that in relation to the subject property?
That is just south of it.
Okay. And the other West Main Road, 291 West Main Road, is to the south of it as well, correct? Where is 67 Warrens Point Road? Anywhere near the subject property?
No, it is not.
How about 36 Beach Drive?
Well, you just said you were striking those.
I said I'd like to strike them, but you have them left there.
Yep, I have them listed there. It's not near them.
Denise, 291 West Main Road can't be plat 32.
No, it's 3, I'm sorry, it's a
Plat
typo.
3, okay, thank you.
So is 36 Beach Drive, where is that in relation to the subject property?
It's south.
How far south? It's nowhere near.
No, it's not near.
Okay.
These are sales throughout the town, I was comparing neighborhoods.
Okay. So, and these are just sales. So let's look at the two sales, even the two sales in the neighborhood on West Main Road to the south, where you have your value per acre or value per square foot. And these are south of the subject property, which is supposed to be the more expensive neighborhood. And the property on 291 West Main Road is $6.11 per square foot. And the property at 315Q West Main Road is $10.15 per square foot. And then if you go up to the top, the value of my client's property is almost $16 a square foot, $15.88. And the amount that we've claimed by appeal, as you pointed out, is 8.9, or about $9 per square foot, between the 6 and the 10. So how do you justify, if you look at the value of the square footage?
Down the bottom, I'm taking the 3 acres. At the top, we're only comparing the first 2 acres.
You're not comparing the same thing in each column?
Down the bottom, I took the sale price for the first 3 acres, for the total lot, just to show that what a lot is selling for. I didn't break up the 2 acres on that. That's for the whole 3 acres of that parcel. So only 2 acres is be valued at that.
So, but I just want to make this clear. So we're going over where these aren't numbered columns. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5th column to the right.
The 5th column to the right.
From the right edge. Says value per square foot at the top.
2, 3, 4.
No, from the right, not from the left, from the right.
Yeah, but it's value per acre.
No, it says value per square foot. The very last column is blank, then there's tax, then there's CF, then there's neighborhood, then there's value per square foot.
Okay. 15.
Okay? And that's total, and
That's
that's total land only, right? Which, that's good. We're getting land here, not buildings. That's what we're talking about.
And total land on the bottom.
Okay, and you're saying, so, but let's just keep from the top.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is what you've actually got this subject property appraised.
Correct.
Almost $15.88.
Correct.
The next one is the amount, if as claimed by the appeal, would be $8.99 per square foot. So round it off $9.
Yes.
Then drop past the other tenants and looking at the two that are in this neighborhood. 315 West Main Road.
Yes.
Shows $10.15 a square foot.
Correct.
Land only.
Correct.
That isn't comparable
Yes, we have.
to the number above?
No, it is. It is.
Okay,
It is.
so why is this land 50%, why is my client's land 50% more valuable than the same thing, which even admittedly is in the more expensive neighborhood in the south, with more dresser,
it's not.
because you put sales?
It's the same neighborhoods. If you look in the neighborhood, they're the same neighborhoods.
So that's what I'm saying, it's in the same neighborhood.
Yes,
And
but you
yet the
have
other
twice the
property
land.
is 50,
When you get it from us, it's just a big black plastic.
but this is a value per square foot.
You have three times the land.
And if you look at the same thing with 291 West Main Road, it's
Yes.
even more, it's $6.11.
But you keep going per square foot. We start with the 2-acre site. And we put factors in according to the 2-acre site. That's the prime site.
Here at the town, that'll be
And she has
something
more
that
land
get it through there
than they have.
somehow, I'm not sure how, but.
So it's all.
But then you're saying all of her land, but then you're valuing all of her land that we've already discussed is the wetlands and not buildable and whatnot.
We don't know that.
We have the testimony, you don't have any testimony to the contrary of it. And so you're saying because you don't know that, you've walked that land, but you think that swishing through the mud is worth the same value per acre as if it's buildable. That's what you've done.
No, I didn't do that. We did a sales analysis. The first 2 acres were buildable site was determined to be that value that we placed on it. And I have not even mentioned the fact that this appeal there was no file for account. So this is another thing that right off this, I meant to start with.
I'll ask your solicitor to provide you with notice that the Supreme Court has ruled that an account is not necessary to be filed when there is a revaluation.
Andy, I agree. I don't remember when that case was, but it wasn't too long ago.
No, those would be at the transfer station.
So actually it was a while ago, but in any case.
I couldn't hear you.
Mr. Humphrey said, and he'll say if not, or we can ask, he's going to say that he agrees. The county is not.
I don't know what sites they have. Okay. All right, yeah, you're welcome, bye-bye.
Okay.
Tony said he's on the road.
So the first 2 acres is the prime site.
Okay, great.
And the neighborhood is the neighborhood according to sales.
Why is that? Is there a difference between my client's property and the immediate property to the north of the neighborhood? Is she on the northerly border of the neighborhood?
She is.
Okay, what do you call that neighborhood that she's in?
0150.
Okay.
And that was established through sales analysis over time from the year 2000 until now.
Okay.
There's nothing to substantiate any change to that neighborhood.
Okay. What's the difference between, what do you call the neighborhood to the north? Just assume you have another number?
0115.
Okay. What's the difference between those two neighborhoods?
The difference is how from the sales analysis, that's what they determined.
And do you have that data? Who's they?
Vision appraisal and the prior assessors.
Okay, so you don't have any knowledge of that. You're just relying on.
Yes, I do. I have the knowledge from what they supplied me. All those properties are on West Main Road. They go from West Main Road to the river. They've given them that number. That's the West Main Road influence. Her property is further in. The neighborhood changed as it goes closer.
Okay, but there's a difference between the north-south boundary.
There is.
So
There's differences throughout different spots according to how the sales happen.
So based on your certification as a certified tax assessor and the training you have, could you please explain what are the factors from an assessment point of view, not the sales, But just what, when you look at it, you're an assessor, you're supposed to be trained on this. What's the difference between those two neighborhoods from the north and the south?
The sales is what I use to determine a neighborhood. I cannot change that unless I have a sale to show me a difference.
But you have had hardly any sales.
Substantiates.
How many sales have you had in the northern part of that neighborhood in the last 3 years?
I've not happened.
None. So you're relying on outdated data for an arbitrary
I can't
neighborhood
change
classification.
that without a sale. I'm bound to have a sale to show the change. That neighborhood was established because there was a sale there.
Is there any reason?
There are
Is there any
sales south of that I can show you too.
Is there any reason that you would have to justify the different valuation between this property and the Dresser and the Cabot property, other than that neighborhood distinction? Is there any other reason that you could
Yes,
provide us
and
with?
I have given her a break on that because of the slope of the land. I explained that to you.
Please do the tax assessor for the town of Little Compton.
Yes, I am.
And based on your position within the town of Little Compton, you appraise this property at what value?
Can you speak up about
Maybe we'll get an ask now.
Based upon your position in the town of Little Compton, you've appraised that property at what value?
The total property value that this property is assessed at currently is $1,711,200.
And how did you get to that value?
Vision Appraisal was hired for a 2018 total revaluation through their sales analysis and my due diligence to follow up on Rebecca's request to come look at her property. I lowered the value accordingly.
You lower the value accordingly based on the composition of the soil, the lower,
but it's still.
lower lying property, and access, or use rather than,
Actually,
is that correct?
Correct.
And, based on your, opinion as a tax assessor, do you find fair market value at the time it was assessed?
I do feel it's very fair market value. I feel that actually it's probably a little lower, like I stated prior. I know Ms. Spencer had appealed our values prior, so I do believe it's fair.
All right, I have one more question.
Town solicitor want us to recognize her.
Because I believe the town is, able to take the assessor's opinion.
So you don't need a vote from the board. And I would move that we accept the Cosgrove. We'll use that on the next one.
Anyway, there was a parent on there that was asking for her BSU daughter, but her
For
son.
clarification, Stetson Eddy made a motion to accept Denise Cosgrove, tax assessor, as an expert witness, and was seconded by Bob Booth, and all three were in favor.
The reason why she didn't say she got denied though, because she didn't make enough. And I'm like, anything, you think they'd want to pay out people that made less money than more money, but I don't know, so anyway, so she wasn't eligible for that, which was fine, but we did.
I had one more thing I wanted to mention. I did contact the I Trust and ask them if they were still interested in purchasing the property, the development rights from Spencer Farm, and they said it is still open. The application is still active and still considering it. Thank you.
One summation.
I know, yeah, I'll try to be very quick. Been here much longer than we thought we'd be here anyway. I think you've heard this all, I'm not gonna go through all the stuff. I think the key facts are the disproportionate, the incorrect valuation of the wetlands as prime agricultural land, and the disproportionate assessment between these neighborhoods, which I still would point out for the record, there's no evidence other than years of sales records. There's no factual background to support this difference. And even your own expert is not able to provide you with any kind of physical reasons for the difference in value. And then finally, if you look at Exhibit A, this was produced by her. And this is her value. If you look at the only two properties that were in the neighborhood, and we're also dealing with the time factor there that's allowable, and you can see we're already, when you look at the value of the square footage, we're way above the others. We're almost 2.5 times one and another 50% above the other.
So, okay, I understand that.
Now you can take it any way you want with the different reasons, whether it be the neighborhood, whether it be the wetland, whether it be the dry lake, whatever you want. But it's clearly a totally disproportionate assessment without any other justification for that difference. So I would urge you to grant our appeal.
But yeah, that is a question, is this your income going to pay out?
I have a question, Allison. We have a certain time frame to render a decision. Can we request that the appellant or their appraiser provide the board with a soil map with this property superimposed on it before we render our decision?
Okay, let me give you to that office and they can tell you, okay?
I think we can ask them, I think one willing to provide it.
I guess my question is this to deal with the question of the water, the land down by the waterfront, or
That and the up towards where the two structures.
Yeah,
I'd like to see concrete. I know there's a lot of Mansfield lots. I know it's wet from personal experience, but I know that there were Rhode Island soil maps that delineate where the various soils are.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
That to me has a bearing on the value of the land.
you know,
because between the two jobs last summer.
my client told me the ad trust has a copy, so we will provide, we will submit that. If you would like.
Well, it seemed that.
Within a week?
Probably.
That'd be great.
May I just confirm though that we will submit the soil map, but we're not gonna have further testimony or whether the other side would waive. You're not gonna.
In my mind, the map speaks for itself. I prefer to my other board members.
Andy, I agree with you on that, and I think Stetson's correct also. So if you submit the maps, then the hearing can be closed, subject to the submission of the maps.
So Mr. Humphrey is saying that he concurs with Mr. Eddy that the map speaks for itself and that the hearing can be closed, subject to the submission of the map. And could we just provide 2 weeks just in case we have trouble getting it. The COVID stuff, it's not necessarily, we would provide.
As I recollect, we have 30 days to render a decision.
So you would still have that from whatever day we provide the map.
That'd be
And while we're here and whatnot, are you going to do it, you're gonna meet in person again to deliberate? Or are you gonna do a Zoom meeting to deliberate?
I personally prefer the in person. In all likelihood, I'm totally incompetent with all this other stuff. Carol can testify, anybody knows me. I would have a great deal of difficulty participating in a Zoom meeting on my cell phone.
Doesn't that screw with their unemployment?
My preference is.
But that's what I'm saying, if he brings them back and this is.
If we're not going to take any more testimony, I'm thinking of you, Andy, and not having to make a trip down.
mean, 75% that you use towards payroll.
So.
meet in person to render a decision,
You know, doing whatever they do.
once we have the benefit of the tax of the soil.
And like I said, they did.
Well, let's cross that bridge when we get there.
You know, see, I was gonna say, Thursday, Friday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You know, next week he tells
So do you want to have a motion to close the hearing subject to submission of the soil sample within 2 weeks?
You know,
I'll make a motion that the board review adjourn on the sensitive matter, awaiting a soil map from Mr. Price and or his clients, at which point we will likely return in person to render a decision on the appellant's appeal.
All in favor? Aye.
To be clear, Betty was the one who made the motion. It was seconded by Bob Booth, and all three were in favor. At 11:50 p.m., I understand this meeting to be adjourned.
Yes.
So moved. You second my motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn? Yes. All in favor? Aye.
Okay, motion to adjourn came at 11:51. Stetson Eddie making the motion, Bob Booth making the second, all three in favor.
Thank you. Andy, can I chat with you just for a second?
Good morning, Town Hall, Sheila speaking. She's in the ladies' room at the moment. Okay, stop recording. Okay. All right, I think she's coming back in. I'll have her show me so I know anyways. Okay. All right. Yep. Yep. Bye-bye. Carol said she needs to go to her computer and stop the recording and stop the streaming. You know, it's fine. I'm gonna just peek, so.
Oh my God. Yeah, I gotta get over. Where's my mouse here? Why can't I? I thought this was gonna jump over there.